The fluorescent lights in Mickey's diner buzzed faintly above the corner booth, where Marcus Thompson sat alone at 2:45 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October. The air carried the familiar mix of fryer grease, burnt coffee, and the faint metallic tang of diesel that always drifted in whenever a long-haul driver opened the front door. Marcus hadn't ordered anything beyond the black coffee that now sat cold and untouched in its thick white mug. A thin film had formed on the surface. He hadn't stirred it once. His old Dell Latitude, scratched lid, faded keys from years of late-night coding, rested open against the napkin dispenser. The custom dashboard he'd written himself glowed steady green across the 15-inch screen. 847 trucks online, 312 loading docks, synchronized, 94 traffic signals responding in real time across the Memphis Industrial Corridor and its feeder routes into Arkansas and Mississippi. Every icon pulsed with quiet health. Every route line traced clean arcs. 4 years, 8 months, and 17 days of relentless refinement stared back at him in those numbers. He exhaled slowly, the sound swallowed by the clatter of plates, the low murmur of truckers trading stories at the counter, and the occasional hiss of the grill. His right thumb hovered over the small red button. He'd labeled Master Relay in the private admin interface. Only he could reach. The hardware wasn't hosted on Apex Freight Solutions' shiny new cloud stack in Virginia. It never had been. It lived in a locked steel cabinet bolted to the concrete floor of his garage workshop. 3 ruggedized industrial relays, custom firmware he'd burned himself. Triple redundant cellular failover cards, and a battery backup that could keep the whole thing alive for 72 hours. If the grid went down, he'd built it after the ice storm of 19 left half the corridor dark for 36 hours and drivers stranded with melting reefer loads. The email from Amanda Pierce, the new VP of Operations, had landed at 9:17 that morning. Subject: Service Termination Confirmation. Marcus. Effective 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, Apex Freight Solutions will transition to our new internal TMS platform. Your consulting agreement is hereby terminated without further notice or transition support. All access credentials will be revoked at that time. We appreciate your past contributions. Regards, Amanda Pierce, VP, Operations and Technology. No mention of handoff documentation. No request for architecture diagrams. No acknowledgement that the system she was about to orphan had handled 1.4 million loads without a single preventable delay of delivery penalty since he deployed version 1.0. Marcus had read it 3 times in the quiet of his kitchen, then closed the laptop, kissed his sleeping daughter on the forehead, told his wife he'd be back before dinner, and driven straight to Mickey's. He still hadn't replied. He hadn't called Bobby Martins, the grizzled ops chief who'd first trusted him with the project back when Apex was a regional player with 60 trucks and a prayer. Bobby was retired now, probably casting for Crappie on Pickwick Lake. Amanda had replaced him with MBAs who spoke in quarterly OKRs and vendor rationalization. His phone vibrated once against the Formica tabletop. Kevin Walsh, the night shift supervisor, who still texted him at 3 a.m. when a driver couldn't find a receiver or a signal dropped. Kevin, DataSync lagged on I-40 westbound routes. Probably just a hiccup? Marcus typed back with one thumb. Watch the board. Don't touch anything yet. He hit send, then glanced at the Coca-Cola clock above the register. 2:46. 1 minute. He thought about the night Bobby had driven out to the old warehouse after the first full deployment. No late loads, no overweight tickets. Fuel burned down 14% in the first month. Bobby had clapped him on the shoulder, voice low and gravelly. You're not just fixing trucks, son. You're keeping families fed. Don't ever forget that. Marcus had carried those words through every 2 A&M debug session. Every hostile takeover rumor. Every time some suit tried to commoditize what he built line by line with his own hands and too much coffee. Amanda had called it vendor expense optimization in her all-hands deck last month. His thumb settled on the red button. At exactly 2:47 he pressed it. Nothing dramatic happened on his screen. No red alerts, no sirens. The dashboard simply froze. Every live feed locked in amber. Green indicators mocking the chaos they no longer controlled. Somewhere out there, 847 trucks lost their next turn instruction. Traffic signals stayed green too long or snapped red without cycling. Loading docks that had run like Swiss clockwork for years suddenly had 2 rigs claiming the same bay, air horns blaring, drivers shouting into radios. foreman scrambling with clipboards and walkie-talkies. Marcus switched to the buried secondary status feed he'd coded as insurance years ago, the real heartbeat monitor. Numbers began to climb, idle time spiking, compliance alerts pinging DOT thresholds, customer service lines lighting up like runway markers in fog. He leaned back against the cracked vinyl, arms crossed, and let the silence stretch inside the booth, while the world outside started to choke. His phone started buzzing again. First Kevin, then Michelle from procurement, then a block number that had to be Amanda. He let them ring into voicemail. Maria, the waitress who'd worked the afternoon shift since before Marcus was old enough to drive, appeared with the coffee pot. She refilled his mug without asking, eyes flicking to the laptop screen, then to his face. "You okay, hon? Look like you're waiting for Judgment Day." Marcus managed a small, tired smile, the first real one since the email, just making sure it doesn't come early. She nodded like she'd heard worse stories from men in this booth and walked away, her sneakers squeaking softly on the linoleum. At 2:59, the first real email landed. From Amanda Pierce. Subject: Urgent, critical system failure. Marcus, we are experiencing widespread network disruptions. All routing data has stopped updating. Dispatch cannot assign or reroute loads. Drivers are reporting frozen navigation. This appears to originate from your infrastructure. Provide full credentials and remote access instructions immediately for emergency restoration. He read it twice, then typed one line. No. Send. The replies came faster after that, escalating from professional concern to naked panic to thinly veiled threats. Legal was reviewing the original contract for breach clauses. They'd pursue damages. They'd report him to the FMCSA for willful interference with interstate commerce. They'd ruin him. Marcus sipped the fresh coffee. It tasted bitter, but the warmth spread through his chest like something he hadn't felt in years. At 3:18 his phone rang again. Henry Coleman, one of the few remaining VPs who'd actually read the fine print on the consulting agreement before signing. Marcus answered on speaker, volume low enough that only he could hear over the diner noise. "Marcus," Henry started, voice tight with the strain of a man watching his quarterly bonus evaporate. "We're hemorrhaging money by the minute. Trucks are blocking on-ramps on I-55 and I-40. Receivers are refusing loads because ETAs are meaningless. Customers are already threatening to pull contracts. Amanda's in the war room losing her mind. What do we need to do to get this back online?" Marcus let the silence hang for 5 full seconds. "You need to understand something, Henry. The system isn't on your servers. It never was. The core routing logic, the signal overrides, the predictive ETAs, the failover, the hardware that makes any of it work is sitting in a locked cabinet in my garage. You paid for access, not ownership. Section 4, Paragraph 2, you signed it. Bobby made sure you did." Henry exhaled hard, almost a groan. "We didn't know. You didn't ask." Another pause, longer this time. "What are your terms?" Henry asked finally. Marcus had the proposal ready, drafted 2 weeks ago on the night Amanda first demanded complete documentation handover, during a Zoom call where she'd kept calling him the contractor. Emergency restoration fee. 2.5 times the standard monthly rate, wired within the hour. Full reinstatement of the original contract. No amendments, no internal platform migration attempts, no forced handoff. And Amanda Pierce is removed from any direct interaction with my services or personnel. Effective immediately. She can stay VP if she wants. She just doesn't talk to me or touch anything I built. Henry didn't argue. "I'll need to run it up the chain." "Run it fast," Marcus said. "Every minute costs you 6 figures in penalties alone. And that's before the first lawsuit from a receiver who's holding perishable freight." The line went quiet. Then Henry muttered, "Stand by." Marcus ended the call. Outside the diner window, the sky was turning the bruised purple of late afternoon autumn. A CSX freight train rumbled past on the tracks behind the lot, horns sounding long and low. He pictured the drivers stuck at frozen lights, the dispatchers staring at dead screens, the families waiting for loads that weren't coming because a woman in a glass office had decided his light's work was vendor expense. His phone pinged. Wire confirmation from Apex Accounts Payable. 32 minutes after shutdown. Marcus opened the dashboard again. The master relay icon blinked patiently, waiting. He clicked Restore. Grain cascaded across the feeds like water returning to dry riverbeds after a long drought. Routes repopulated. Signals cycled normally. Docks cleared. The corridor exhaled in unison. He closed the laptop, slid it into the worn messenger bag he carried since community college, and stood. Maria caught his eye from behind the counter as he passed. "World still spinning, hon?" "For now," he said, leaving a 20 on the table. More than enough for coffee, silence, and the unspoken understanding between people who've seen things break and be put back together. He stepped outside into the cooling air. The truck waited across the lot, engine still ticking as it cooled from the drive over. He climbed in, started it, and pulled onto the service road. No sirens, no flashing lights, just the quiet hum of a city slowly remembering how to move again. In the rearview mirror, Mickey's shrank until it was only a neon sign flickering against the gathering dusk. Marcus turned north, toward home, toward the garage, toward the cabinet that held the heartbeat of an entire corridor. He didn't smile, but the weight that had sat on his chest for 4 years, 8 months, and 17 days felt, for the first time, a little lighter.